Hi, my name is Trevor Klee. I'm a tutor, and I also scored 47 verbal on my own GMAT. And this is my notes on GMAT Sentence Correction. So in a previous video, I've covered the importance of meaning and also of parallelism. Here I'm talking about infinitives and participles, which is a really important part of grammar that a lot of people get mixed up on. One thing I'd like to emphasize before I begin, though, is just because this video is on infinitives and participles does not mean that all of a sudden my previous lessons don't stand. We're still going to be focusing on meaning first, and then grammar, and then sentence construction. So this video is on grammar, but that doesn't mean meaning is not more important. So placing this sort of in context of what we've been doing. So we talked about how our first step in the process is always going to be the meaning, or in other words, why did the author include this exact phrase? And then our second step in our sentence correction process is checking our grammatical issues. So we just check in the underlined phrase, which can be about verbs, pronouns, parallelism, misplaced modifiers, infinitives and participle confusion, or independent dependent clauses. So we already went over parallelism. Today we'll be going over infinitives and participle confusion. And then our third step is going to be checking sentence construction issues, which we can ignore for now. And the last step is checking splits. So let's talk about infinitives and participle confusion, because this is something that not only do GMAT sentences tend to confuse, but most GMAT sentence correction guides tend to confuse. I don't think I've ever seen a sentence correction guide get this right, which is why I really wanted to make a video about it. So I'm going to get into exactly how this works. But before I do, one thing I would like to say is that these notes come from my guide, which you can find on my Gumroad page, gumroad.com/Trevor Klee. So if you want more information and you want a bunch of fully worked out explanations of these sorts of issues, then please check out my sentence correction guide, which is on gumroad.com/Trevor Klee. All right, cool. Let's go into some infinitives and participles. So first of all, what are infinitives? Infinitives are verbs with to in front of them. To run, to sit, to play. One thing you should notice here is these are not simple verbs. In fact, they can't really be used as verbs in the same way that other words are used as verbs. So, grammatically correct sentence is, I like baseball. That's a grammatically correct sentence. I too like baseball is not a grammatically correct sentence. If you want to use technical term, that's because I too like baseball is not conjugated. All right, so that's what infinitives are. Infinitives are just verbs with to in front of them. So what are participles? So participles are technically the adjectival form of verbs. So they're adjectives or descriptors or modifiers. So when we're talking about participles, we're really only talking about two forms that matter. So they're active participles, which are ing forms like carrying. So, and they're passive participles, which are ed forms like carried. So, for instance, participles, really commonly, we can just use them just as adjectives. So we can say something like, the boy carrying the ball ran down the field. Right? Carrying the ball describes the boy. Or we can say, the ball carried by the boy, ran down the field, something like that. So carrying, carried. So one thing that I do want to point out here, by the way, is first of all, English is lazy and illogical. Now, I'm going to point that out just because English reuses words a lot in various forms, and the ed stuff is like a great example of that. So as you've probably noticed, carried is also simple past. So we can also say the boy carried the ball in the same way that we can say the ball was carried by the boy. So carried by the boy, passive. The boy carried the ball, past. Why do those have the same form? I don't know, because English is lazy and illogical, and we decided for some reason that our passive and past forms have to be the same or are almost always the same. It's because English sucks. So I just want to point out that just because they're the same form does not mean they're related at all. It just means English sucks. And this is not a problem in like any other language. English just did this for its own reasons. So why are we talking about infinitives and participles at all? Why do they matter? Who cares? Well, that's because the GMAT, unlike normal English, really dislikes when infinitives and participles are mixed up. So, in English, I like running is fine. Running is fine. And I like to run is also fine. So I like to run. That's in normal English. I like running. Let's make that a little more clear. I like running and I like to run. Both fine. Now, that is not the case in GMAT English. In GMAT English, we can't say I like running. Now, why can't we say that? Well, in GMAT English, we need to use infinitives anytime there's a helper verb or a chain of infinitives. So our helper verb here is like. If I see like, it has to be to run. I like to run. I aim to run. I want to run. There might be an object in the middle of these helper verbs. I use my legs to run. I wear my shoes to run, right? But the important thing is that these are linked. As long as these are linked, as long as like is helping to run, it needs to be an infinitive. It cannot be a participle. This is also true with chains of infinitives. So I can say, for instance, I like to use my shoes to run, right? I like to use my shoes to run. So we also have those chains of infinitives. So we need infinitive. So these are the only case when we'll use infinitives. Participles are used more broadly. Participles are used in verb phrases, right? Like I am running. I am running. So, it's present progressive. That's saying like I'm currently in the process of it. Noun forms of verbs, like running is my, favorite sport. Objects of prepositions. My goal of running a marathon by the end of this year is seeming unlikely, right? My goal of running. So, of running, remember prepositions are like words like of, above, in between, below, whatever. And they're also used as modifiers, which is what we talked about before. So like the boy running fast tripped. So participles have a variety of ways that they can be used. Verb phrases, I am running, or if we want to use our passive, the ball was ran, or the ball is ran to the store. I don't know. Noun forms of verbs, running is my favorite sport. There's not really an equivalent with passive there. Objects of prepositions, not really an equivalent of passive there. Modifiers, there definitely are. The ball carried by the boy is dropped, right? So just be careful here. Infinitives need to be used anytime there's a helper verb or a chain of infinitives. I like to run, or I use my shoes to run. Participles are used in verb phrases, noun forms of verbs, objects, prepositions, and modifiers. So people get this mixed up all the time, mainly because normal English is not strict about this. GMAT English is. So with that in mind, let's go through an example. This is an actual GMAT example. And it's funny, when I found this on GMAT Club, and when I found this on GMAT Club, the top voted answer got this completely wrong. So yeah, people get mixed up on this literally all the time. GMAT Club's not great on sentence correction in general, but this sort of stuff, they get really bad on. So let's talk about this. So especially in the early years, new entrepreneurs may need to find resourceful ways like renting temporary office space or using ancillary services that make their company seem large and more firmly established than they may actually be. So let's go through our process here. Especially in the early years, new entrepreneurs may need to find resourceful ways. So what is it? So let's just ignore all the stuff in the comments here, and let's ignore this. New entrepreneurs may need to find resourceful ways to make their company seem larger and more firmly established. So already, if I try to put in my own words, it's to make their company seem larger and more firmly established. So let's talk about this so I don't just end it there. So in terms of what we were talking about, need to find ways to make. These are my helper verb infinitive. Need to find ways to make. So I've got verb, infinitive, object, infinitive. Super classic construction there. This is what I was talking about. I have both my chains of infinitives here, and I also have my object here. This is the same thing as I like to use my shoes to go to the movies. Same thing. All right. And then the other thing that's going on here, of course, is this and, which is the parallelism we talked about in our last video. This is a conjunction. So we need parallelism between this and this because I need parallelism around my conjunction. Larger and more firmly established. But let's not talk about that too much. So need to find ways to make. So off, off, off. So this is the only one that's right. And I want to point out that this one is wrong. Now, even if this said larger, it would still be wrong because this is something that is okay in normal English, not okay in GMAT English. In normal English, saying new entrepreneurs may need to find ways of making their company seem larger, totally fine. In GMAT English, you cannot say new entrepreneurs may need to find ways of making. It is ways to make because there is a helper verb. All right, cool. So this was my video on infinitives and participles. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, if you enjoyed this, please, first of all, check out my sentence correction guide, gumroad.com/TrevorClee. And also please like and subscribe because I'll be doing some more sentence correction videos. Thanks.